ET in general out in the middle of nowhere?
That's what I was doing. I actually had a pistol in my hand at the time. I was really ticked off. When I was having this fit, I had a good stuff.
Is that a record? Yep, it's got to be. We'll have to look at you. I'm thinking it is. We have with us today Mr. Joe Montaldo. Talking on abductions 303. And Joe and his ICAR team has investigated more than 12,000 abduction cases in the last 27 years. His talk will include how there are generations of abductions. Are you and your loved ones in a specific age group of abducted people? Come hear what age groups are being targeted now. Welcome aboard, Joe.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. All right, can y'all hear me okay? Most of y'all should know me from yesterday, so I'm going to skip all the formal introductions because I have my New York Straight director from ICAR, Lily's, with us, and I'm going to speak for about an hour, and then I'm turning the mic over to her and let her tell you about one of her personal experiences, and then we'll open it up for Q&A after that. But make it short, I do work with the International Community Family Research, which is ICAR, www.icar1. We're kind of easy to find these days, not real hard to find anyway. For most people who look for me, Facebook is the easiest way to find me. I have 5 different pages there now, so just kind of look around, type in UFO, paranormal, any of that stuff, I should come up. And really, we have a huge following on Facebook. It's a fantastic medium. And I have to tell you, it has generated a lot of interesting stuff for us because my Oregon State Director, November Hansen, who also hosts a show called Voice of the People for me, just finished writing a book. We had set up a great questionnaire. It was about 100 questions, wasn't it?
Easy.
It was easy, 100 questions. It's still posted to the website. Anybody can fill it out. They're going to also add a reptilian and a human section to that as well, so anybody who can take it. It's interesting to watch how many people submitted. By the way, the first 25 were very famous contactees. Leah Haley's is one of them. Katarina Wilson's another one. Jim Sparks is another one. Miriam Isley's another one. Marion Delicato is also in the list. So these are all people most of the community should be familiar with. So they fill the questionnaires out as well. So they were kind of like the test batch for everything coming in. Now, originally I gave November, I believe, 60 cases. Since then, we've probably picked up another 100. So I'm waiting for her book to come out in May. As soon as that comes out, we'll release it, and everybody can take a look at it. And then we'll release the other comments that came out with the thing. The reason I'm bringing all this up is because this is one of the things ICAR does. We track abductions. This is what we do. This is what we're here for. We literally track abductions by the thousands, and that's how we do. We do comparison studies across the board on alien abductions. It allows us to formulate what we all like to call abduction criteria, which personally makes my job way easier. When somebody walks up to me and says, Joe, hi, I'm an abductee, I'm a contactee, I say, okay, why do you think that? Tell me why you think that. When they start talking to me, I am listening for keywords, for specific words that they're going to say. If in 20 minutes I haven't heard but 1 or 2 of them, no, I'm not even going to waste my time. It's more than likely somebody who's studied on the internet or has done some reading of some books somewhere, but really is not a contactee. Within a 20-minute conversation, a contactee will generally, or an abductee will generally keyword 50 to 100 times. Easy 50 to 100 times. So for us, it's a lot different. I mean, we don't accept anybody at their word. And be honest with you, you're going to have to prove to us that you're a contactee. We're a very strict organization when it comes to certain research, especially abduction research. And sometimes we may miss out on some stuff because we are as strict as we are. Sometimes we may miss stuff. But fortunately for me, there is Yvonne Smith and Mary Rodwell and several others out there doing research as well. So every now and then what we do is we pool it. I'll invite them on the shows, get all their current research, and compare it to where we are at that moment. Usually if you listen, there's a couple of shows I've done. If you really listen, you'll find out with myself and Darryl, Yvonne, and all the ones I just listed, we're usually about 80% in the same areas. When it comes to the grays, the reptilians, and the human abductions, we stay at about 80%. So this way we know that at least this core basis of information is extremely correct. It may not make everybody happy. It may make a lot of the researchers in the field mad. But because you have a group of researchers with a very large amount of contactees, it's hard to refute it. It really is. So what I'm going to do, basically what we do is, like, I'll give you an example. We get somebody that comes in an organization. We've been tracking family generations, sometimes 6 and 7 generations in a family of abductees. This makes for a very, very interesting thing. I can go all the way back to the great-grandmother, all the way forward to the great-granddaughter, and find this scenario running through the family. Now, what I'm looking for is, I know they're all being abducted, but what's the difference between the great-great-granddaughter and the great-great-grandmother? What is it? Generally, you're going to find a progressive that their abilities, especially in their psychic empathic abilities, have improved immensely over 6 generations. And it's a steady increase. It's going to be a steady increase until a race becomes fully telepathic. Or even beyond that, I'm not sure. They may even be looking for something more than that. But it is something that we can physically track down. Something else we do is we actually test telepathic abilities. We won't even consider you to be a contactee. If you're not empathic, out you go. You're off the list. And it doesn't matter if you're a gray contactee, a human contactee, or a reptilian contactee. If you don't possess empathic abilities, it's out. What you got?
Define with empathic.
Empathic is the sharing of emotions. It's basically what it is you can sense and feel other emotions, or you can send and feel other emotions. So if they're truly empathic, right now they would have a good sense of what was going on in this run.
A person with empathy, not a person with telepathy.
Yeah. And now telepathy is something you will find in contactees. It's just contactees take time to develop telepathic abilities. It takes effort and work, and empathic, unfortunately, is just inbred into them. What's bad about this is, say someone doesn't know they're a contactee. They're standing in a mall one day, all of a sudden they burst out crying, and no one standing around them can figure out, why is this person crying? I mean, they're just bawling, and you ask them what's the matter. Well, nothing's the matter, but they're just bawling, and you're like, what? Well, they're starting to sense somebody else. It's the same thing, though. They might start laughing, they might get the giggles. Or sometimes that person might walk into this room, and everybody in this room at one time gets mad or gets happy. We see this on a regular basis. It's also kind of weird to deal with, because when you're dealing with one that really knows their empathy, and you make them angry, a lot of times they will just transfer that over. They're like, well, you know what? Here, you take it. Well, it's part of research. You got to kind of deal with it. But it is something that we do look for, and it is something that we do expect to find in every legitimate abductee.
How to do it, you can turn it off.
Yeah. Well, you can turn off your abilities, but it's going to be there no matter what. It's going to be there. You're always going to sense it and feel it. It's also one of the reasons why half of our investigators or abductees are contactees. Now, I had to split that. If it was up to me, they would all be, okay? But the field will not allow that. So I actually have to have half of our investigators and directors are not contactees. They're just everyday people. And then the other half are contactees, because a contactee can generally sense another contactee at 1,000 paces. They'll walk in a room and they know. Sometimes recognize the place. Some of my closest friends, before I met them, actually physically met them, I described what they looked like, what they were wearing, and things like that. It's just really weird. And all of a sudden you hear, and I can't say this because it's G-rated wrong, but you hear like, oh, how could you know that? Well, it's one of those things. Seen you somewhere. Maybe I've seen you walking down the street or something, Never been to Sedona, Arizona, but yet I know what you look like. That's impossible unless you've seen them on a ship, and it's not. And this is also a common thing we find in contactees. What I find interesting lately is how many have been finding each other and getting married. They get married, they have kids, and they seem to have a different kind of relationship. Maybe it's based because they knew each other from the ships. I'm not sure what it is. It seems to be a much more stable relationship. It seems to be a much more caring relationship, and it's just based on something different. It's one of those things that we run into on a regular basis. Now, some people think maybe the aliens are doing this. Maybe they're pairing these individuals. I don't know. It's quite possible. I can't prove it at this point either way, so we're going to leave that in I don't know category. Because in some cases it does. What was that?
Should I vote for it?
Yeah, I'm with you.
We run indications for that.
Have you? Okay. Well, you see, that's the point. And I mean, most researchers in this field are going to, that's what really makes abduction research different from UFO research. UFO research, there's 5,000 explanations for what's going on, and everybody in the field is arguing with each other about it. In abduction research, you're going to find a really strong 70, 80% of the research being done, everyone agrees on. Now, none of us are going to ever agree 100% because, frankly, we got egos and other problems besides that. So those things are going to get in the way. And then sometimes there's going to be data that's going to be different from different areas. So we also know that. So we don't expect everybody to agree 100%, but we do like to see that 70 to 80% in the abduction field do agree. It's one of those things, for anybody who caught the Alfred Weber interview with the billion contactee thing, everybody was like, oh my God, did he say a billion contactees? Well, the field consensus is 10 to 15% of the population. So it's self-explanatory. 10% 660 million, 10% is, 15% is about 1.3 or 1.2, 1.3 billion, somewhere around there. And this is a consensus across the field. I just don't think anybody ever used the billion word before. Alfred did that on purpose. Boy, I was a close and dear friend of mine, but he did that on purpose because he gets 5 cents a click on the Examiner, and literally there was like 1 million clicks on that article. So he did all right. He made a few pennies off of that one. And he just got in trouble with Richard Dolan a couple of weeks before that over the Laura Yachik thing. So that was kind of funny too. But hey, you know, I'm not gonna fault you for trying to earn a living. Just I wish you would have done it a different way. But we do stand by that. The field does stand by the 10 to 15%. So at least we have that to go with, and it is a number we can work forward with. And we can look and say, okay, how could this possibly physically be possible? Let's say that they're going to rule out half of this billion we're talking about. So it still leaves us 500 million. Across 3 different types of aliens, it's about 180 million per alien per year, per day. How are they doing this? I mean, they must literally have lines of people going and coming on a regular basis. I mean, it has to be like a revolving door. Now, when I first heard this, I was like, man, I don't know. Well, Linda and I were in Gulf Breeze, about 10 years ago, I think. And this isn't the first time this has happened, and there's been times when other people have been present. But on this particular occasion, we were out on the beach in Gulf Breeze, Florida, right next to Eglin Air Force Base, by the way, and there's a group of hotels right there. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning. Don't know why I decided to stop the other way. Have not a clue. I'd be lying if I gave you a reason. I don't know. I'm driving on 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, what are we doing out here? I don't know. And Linda's like, don't you think we should go? Nah, come on, drive some more. And I'm like, well, let's stop here. Okay, so we get out the car. There's this big sand, and we come walking, and both of us looked at the same time. There was China up on the beach, which isn't impossible. There's no way it was not in the bar. Frankly, the water's too shallow to get there anyway. So I'm looking at Linda, and she's looking at me. I'm like, we're both losing our mind. Well, not at the moment. We didn't actually see what happened. But when we went back and actually went back through the memories, I saw people streaming out of the hotel. Now, what's interesting about this is I have more than 1,000 abduction cases out of Gulf Breeze, but none of them live in Gulf Breeze. These are all people who go down there on vacations and get this, sometimes 2 and 3 times a year. They're drawn to the area. They go, one of the cases we're working on right now, the family went down there, this family of 7 went down there, hung out, 9 days, right? Credit card was used 1 time, 9 days. There was no hotel, the hotel was paid for the 9 days. None of the cameras seen the family going or coming until the first and last day. There was no food bills, nothing else. Now, we can prove by the air flight that they were there. We can prove by the hotel they were there. We can prove when they left and got back on that flight and left. The whole 7 days in between that, no one seen them, no one heard from them, no cash was spent as far as they could tell, and no credit cards were used. And this is actually a fairly well-off family. They pretty much just used credit cards. Now, this isn't the only case we have like this down there. We have actually a lot of these cases down there. This is something that, you know, more and more we're releasing more of this into the field. But I like to let our investigators, especially our young directors and stuff, and when I mean young, I mean novice getting into the field, kind of go through a lot of this material before we make it generally public. And it usually is made public in places like this or on one of the radio shows or something like that. And it's something later this year I'll be talking on Coast about. But we have a lot of these cases. And we've learned in the United States especially, and it's not just the United States by any means, there seems to be specific areas in the United States where contactees are drawn in mass. So at first I'm thinking ET's flying all over the world picking up people. No, that's not what ET's doing. ET is going in specific areas and bringing in people. Most people don't realize New York City is the highest amount of abductions in the United States. Not some rural area out in the woods, not some little town we've never heard of, but New York City. Now, it's not the largest abductions in the world, by the way. Mexico City had the honor. When it comes to worldwide abductions, I think the United States is ranked, well, not the United States, but New York's ranked like fourth. There's a couple of cities ahead of them, but those are also much larger cities in New York, which you'd never think. Yeah? When I think of New York, I think, well, it's the biggest city in the world. Well, no, it's not. Actually, I think it's the fifth or something, and that's about where they are in the abduction thing worldwide. Mexico City gets the ungodly amounts of abductions. It's unfortunate we don't have a better team of investigators down there because I really think we are losing a lot of information out of that particular area. But still, they're there. So we see all of this on a regular basis. Now, I got kind of off on a tangent there. I want to backstep here a little while. Most people are familiar with how abductions start, but I don't think people are familiar when abductions start. You know, you'll hear people talk, well, it starts at childhood. Well, true, it does start at childhood, but not really. It actually starts while you're still in your mother's womb. They physically remove you from the womb at least twice on board the ship. Then they put you back, send you back, and go on. Now, to the question, how do we know that? Because we literally have more than 3,000 contactees that have said the exact same thing. And since this is actually the first time I'm talking about this publicly, there's no way they could have done it. These are the kind of things. This is one of the reasons ICAR is so strict on releasing data, because the more data as an organization we put into the mainstream, the harder it is for me to say who's telling me the truth, who's not. You know, it's gotten to the point a couple of years ago, about 8 years ago, or 6 years ago on Wake Up USA, I released about 15 or 20% of ICAR's abduction criteria, including stuff like blue plasma and things along those lines. And lo and behold, within a year, our contactee base increased by 70%. Well, they weren't contactees. They were calling us, writing us, and they were quoting stuff they heard me or one of the other investigators or one of the other directors or one of the other show hosts talk about. They were simply rehashing stuff. So I'm listening to them, but I'm listening, you know, I hear them saying what I've said on the air many times, and I'm thinking, well, wait, where's the rest? Where's the rest? What else makes you a contactee? You can't quote me and tell me you're a contactee. I need more than that. I need to hear the rest of the data. So you don't actually get that. But we do know that a lot of the mothers get really freaked out. And we've had a lot of them while they were pregnant come see us or write to us or catch us online and talk to us about it. They get really agitated, really angry. Even though they don't seem to be harming the babies, they do get really, really irritated, which I can't blame them. When I know they're taking my son, I get hacked up. I'm not going to lie about it. You can ask Linda. I've actually gotten violent about it a couple of times. Not really did any good, to be honest with you, but still, you know, made me feel better anyhow. I'm not going to lie. But it didn't help the situation any. And I really have tried it. And we do work with, there's about 150 people right now we work with that either have said they have ceased their abductions or they have stopped. So what we like to do, and I'm trying to get Darryl to let me do this, is hard-headed sucker, but we do like to regress and to find out if the abductions have physically stopped. Our problem is anytime we take anybody down deep, it's still going on. But if you aggravate, you get mad enough and get irritated enough, they will stop letting you remember. It's that simple. They just cut it out of your memory. They're not going to let you remember. And I think there's a couple of reasons why for it. A lot of the people become dysfunctional if they don't take it out. They start having psychological problems, mental problems. They can't deal with society. They become angry, disenchanted, disheartened. And it's either take the scenario away or let the person end up in the loony bin. So in most cases, they just take the scenario away. I'm never going to say that no one's ever had their abduction stopped because, frankly, we do know that they just stop abduction sometimes. In some cases, they just stop. For whatever reason they do, they just stop. Personally, I don't think it's anything to contactees doing because I've said this a million times. If you can't stop a military abduction, there's no way in hell you can stop an alien abduction. And I have never met anyone that can stop a military abduction, ever. And I know some really nasty, some really good people, and everything in between, and no one's been able to do it. And I have to be honest with y'all, the aliens are much more advanced than our military is. So in their case, you may get lucky occasionally on empathy and get them to stop. Or if they feel like it's doing more harm than good, they may stop. Or like you said, they may just block the memories. In a lot of cases, that's all they do is block the memories. That's what they're doing in Darryl Sims' case. You know, he said he got up and karate kicked the gray, which I still get a kick out of. I said, yeah, I can just see you with your kung fu in the gray. He said, I'm serious, John. I said, no, I don't believe you. I said, I know you're serious. I said, but still, I'm not buying it. So I said, that's the reason I give him hell all the time. But he's not the only one. There's other people out there that tell me the same things. Or, well, Whitley was talking about one time him and his brother chasing around the house with baseball bats. I'm thinking, I want to see this, really. I want to see. I mean, it's not that it's not possible that they're doing it, but I would personally like to see this gray running around the house going, I'm going to zap you, buddy. You better knock it off. And, or, you know, because, come on, they don't even have to physically come in your house to take you. The humans and the reptilians do, but the grays don't. I mean, they can take you to the wall. They don't even have to come down. I think they come down more or less to calm you down. They zap you with their little thingy, and everybody just kind of chills. It doesn't completely paralyze you, but enough. And then they take you. And I think that's more for your protection, and maybe their protection, because a couple of people have said they managed to get a hand loose and smack one or two of them. And I'm actually crazy. You're really upset when you smack them. I can't, you know, I was talking with Travis Walton about this, and he said, Joe, man, I was just swinging. I was just swinging anything I could swing. And I'm like, well, I understand that. You know, come on, let's be honest. You know, something's carrying you down, striving you down in bed. Yeah, you're going to swing. You're going to get upset with them.
Paralyze your gun.
You know, well, you know, you got to wonder about that. Why didn't they paralyze that particular individual? Why didn't they let them just go ape like? Well, they get to them in time apparently, but those kind of things happen, and we do document those cases as well. But something we get a lot of, good, bad, and indifferent. What are these? What is abduction? Is it good or is it bad? That's really more of a point of view. The abductions that started pre-birth, I don't think are nothing but checkups. The abductions at childhood, which range between ages 3 and ages 10, usually are more playtime than they are anything else. I've never really interviewed a child who said they were scared. They'll call them my friend. I've heard this statement literally from a couple thousand kids. They're my friends, my little friends, my little gray friends, my little bee friends. They call them all kinds of things, but they usually use the word friend. So there's no fear there at all. But maybe it's like everything else in life when it comes to children. You know, things are taught to children, like being racist or things like that. Children aren't born that way. They're taught that. So maybe they're taught to fear, or maybe when they hit puberty and Mr. Gray and Mr. Human and Mr. Reptilian comes and does their fun stuff, they get a little resentful. But in the young years, especially with the Grays, they seem to take them, bring them on board ships, introduce them to other children. And what I'm thinking here, and most of the researchers agree, is these are probably people that are going to be lifelong abductions with these children. They're actually meeting that young. And they will stay as a group or a core group probably their entire lives until they die. It's one of the things we talk about, the core groups, the badge groups. We found a long time ago that not only do they abduct you, but there's lots. You know, there might be like lot A1, lot A2, lot 3, 4B, stuff like that. We found that amongst different groups of contactees because they seem to be concentrating on different things with different groups. And there's a lot of things going on here. I mean, literally, there's literally hundreds of stuff going on. You know, I said about this yesterday. People always say, "Oh, the agenda." What agenda? Let's talk several hundred agendas. There's 4 or 5 primary agendas, like the hybrid programs and some of the breeding programs. Those seem to be agendas that don't sway, don't move. That are standard with all the aliens for whatever reason they're doing them. They seem to be a standard that's going on. But then there seems to be stuff like, why would you take someone's eyeballs out and set them on your chest? Why would you do that? What does that serve? Why would you sever an arm and put it out and let them watch it while you're doing it? These can only be for emotional stress because they're numb. They don't feel it when it happens. So it's not about pain. It has to be to see how the person's going to react. One case, the lady was praying to God, and the ET looked down at her telepathically and said, well, here, see if your God can stop that. Remove their eyes and put them facing towards her. Now, what is that for? I mean, that doesn't really serve any purpose other than to scare the individual. I don't see the purpose there, unless they're trying to convince him of something else. But we get cases like this all the time. Those cases just flip me out. When people start talking about that, it just flips me out. But then on the same end, we get cases on the extreme other side where they'll come take an individual. These individuals are usually old. They're usually in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, stuff like that. Move it into the keeper modes. There's more rewards than there are punishments, I should say. Especially for the more advanced contactees, they'll help them enlighten their psychic abilities. They'll help them understand what they're here for, what they're doing, why they're involved with this. The keepers especially tend to have a load of information. Even they're not 100% accurate by any means, but they have a load of information. And they are the ones that or the Greys will pick up, or the Reptilians will pick up, and they're the ones that kind of help when they bring on the new abductees or when they're dealing with the hybrid children, stuff like that. I don't like using star children, indigo children like that because it gets really weird up in there. To me, a star child is simply a child born from a contactee. It's a simple thing for me. But for the rest of the field, it's not. It's a really heated debate. So I kind of stay out of it because, they want to start talking about indigos, which are supposed to be hybrids born from the aliens to human parents. I would buy that except for the fact that some doctor somewhere would say, oh, wait a minute, I've never seen that kind of DNA before. Let's take this child. Well, we don't see that happening. So more than likely, they're not hybrids. They may be advanced forms of humans, but they're not hybrids. They're not containing extraterrestrial DNA. So that's why I had to differ from a lot of the community, because without that DNA to prove they're hybrids, they're not hybrids. If there's no foreign DNA, you can't call it a hybrid. It's a real simple thing. Now, there is an argument to the fact that if we're actually genetically from them, then we won't see any new DNA, meaning that if the Greys and the reptilians are what created us, we already contain both DNAs. So there wouldn't be a new DNA unless the Greys were involved, and of course, then there would be a new DNA. It's kind of like when you hear a contactee or a supposed contactee tell you about a planet. Well, none of the three races that we talk to speak. They don't speak English. They don't speak verbally. It's telepathic, and it's usually done with images. Now, how do you get a name from an image? They show you their home world, but you don't know what the actual name is. It would be like if I put this up and said, telepathically showed you that. What am I showing you? Really? What am I showing you? Am I showing you the bottle? Am I showing you it's half full, half empty? Am I showing you the lid, the name? What? I mean, that's an assumption. As soon as that telepathic message goes out, you're assuming what this means, because there's no real way of making you understand what that is except through trial and error. When I image this to you, now I'm meaning a bottle of water, you may come up with something else. Now, after 4 or 5 times of doing it, the abductee may learn. And again, they may not. There's no way of really knowing. So I get real skeptical when I hear names of planets and things like that. Because judging from the way all contactees talk, there just doesn't seem to be that ability there. Even with the Greys, where the contactees seem to have their own language, you never see them writing the name of the homeworld in there. They write all kind of information down in these journals. I mean, I love when someone hands me a journal and says, here, and I'm like, well, I can't read. This is a code. I need the key. And then I don't want to sit there and go through it and read keys. So I actually ask them to rewrite it for me, which most of them don't want to do because it makes them really nervous. This is really personal information to them. And a lot of times there'll be drawings in there of engines or drawings of different types of craft, but you can't understand because, like I said, it's all written in code. You have to have the key to look at it. This is very prominent amongst great contactees. This is something we find all the time. Not so much with the reptilians and the humans. They don't seem to do it. They seem to stay away from it. But the Greys seem to do it. I guess it must be something that the Greys want the abductees to do or the contactees to do. Because not all of them do it, but most of them do it. And I don't know why. I don't know if they're doing it for their own peace of mind, which is quite possible. When you get this kind of information, you might just want to jot it down just so you don't think you're totally crazy. Or you might want to go back and remember one day something that happened to you 10 years earlier. But I got to be honest with you. Most contactees that do have conscious memory, I could ask them today, I could ask them 30 years from now. I'm going to give the exact same explanation. It's like it's etched in their head. Now, going back to something I was talking about yesterday with Jim Sparks and them, one of the problems with any abductee that says they know everything or have a lot of information. Okay, Jim and Kat and them are pretty advanced contactees. They probably, in reality, remember 10 or 15%, maybe 20% of their abductions. Of course, they think they remember more until I did the thing with the numbers and said, well, wait, if you're getting 2 hours a day times 30,000 hours a month, 10,000 hours now. Well, there's just not that kind of information anywhere in the field. I consider myself an advanced contactee, but I can maybe if I say I haven't pushed every ounce of information that may be in my head, and even some of the regression stuff, I might have 200 hours. Maybe. And that's a big maybe. I'm not lying. It's a big. When I've talked with other contactees like Miriam and a few of the others, when I really push them to give me an hour, if I had to sit you down and have you tell me everything that's in your head, how many hours is it going to take? Most of them take 10 to 15 hours, maybe 20 hours. Well, these are lifetime abductees, some of them 40, 50, 60 years old. There's way more hours there than that. So when it comes right down to it, I doubt that any of the major contactees really do remember more than 15 or 20%. The regular contactees are probably in the 5% range, and the abductees, of course, or abductees, they don't remember anything, which I get in trouble for all the time because I do distinguish between abductees and contactees. Abductees are simply someone that doesn't know they're being contacted. They know there's something going on. They know there's something not right in their life, but they really don't know what it is. They suspect, they're starting to have dreams, they're starting to awaken, but still They don't know what it is. Contactees, on the other hand, know, fully functionally aware. They're being abducted by aliens. They're being taken. What I always get a crack up about is from 11, start of puberty, till about 28, I tell all contactees the same thing. Do you want to remember? Because people ask me all the time, help me remember, help me remember. I said, why? I said, that is the years where you don't want to remember. The things that go on from 12 to 30 is stuff you don't want to remember. And I will help anybody remember who wants to, but I'm upfront and honest with them. 90% of the time, the information in there is not stuff consciously you want to remember. Now, when they get in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, it changes. Contact, when I first got in this field, I heard somebody talk about contactees one day, and I'm like, well, wait, that's it? That's it? There's nothing else? Well, no, we understand that it starts pre-birth, runs all the way through life, runs through children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and on and on. So there's lots of information you can get just from one family. You can just follow one family line. I think altogether now there's about a dozen cases we have that are more than 5 generations. And I got to be honest with y'all, those are my favorite cases by far. Because when I can look and see the progression from one end to the other end, it really gives me an understanding of what may have went on 10,000 years ago and where this may end up 10,000 years from now. And if it holds true to the way it's been progressing, we'll be a very enlightened species. Whether or not we use it for good or bad, I have no idea. Won't be here to judge it. And I don't know if anybody's going to stop us from using it either way, because it doesn't seem that they intervene right now. It seems that they just let us wander on and do whatever it is that we want to do. But when it comes to the Greys, they bring you on board the ship. They do their little routines. Now, at 11 or 12, they're going to pick you up. If you're a female, they're going to pick you up. They're going to run you through a whole realm of experiments. They're going to start implanting you at that age. And usually it runs on well into your 20s, 25, 26, 27, 28 years old. The only time they seem to stop is actually when someone actually becomes pregnant. And they do tend to stop. They don't really do anything after that. They do abduct you, but they're not really doing anything else at the time. After the child's born, again, it goes right back to the same routine. It's a steady routine. Now, this isn't by any means for every contactee that's out there, but for the large majority, between ages 11 and ages 28, this is what's happening to them. Now, once they get into the 30s, and this is really when the awakening starts, we do have younger contactees that wake earlier, but in general, probably 80% of our contactees usually start awaking somewhere in their 30s. They'll start having these massive dreams where they're like, what is this? And then usually after that, they'll find someone or they'll find a research forum. Now we have the internet, so which is not always a good thing, but we have the internet, so there's lots of ways to go look and see that other people are having these same experiences, having these same problems, and having these same dreams. Now, this is your dream in your head, and then you go on the internet and read it. What do you think? You've never told anybody, you've never talked to anybody, and here's your dream on the internet. You're thinking, well, that's impossible. And some of this stuff is pretty, well, come on in, y'all can have a seat over there. That's just a little grazing comes down right here. It's an invisible mode, don't worry about it. If I start moving this way, y'all all run. But still, it is interesting to watch these progressions. And as an organization, it's a nice thing for us. We can watch, we can tag these people ourselves. And yes, we do run our own experiments. I won't lie about it. I have gotten called on the carpet for this in the past. But we do program contactees. It's part of what we do. Because we're looking for specific information. And a lot of times I can't get it any other way. So we'll find, and it's all volunteer. It's not like we're doing this on the queue or anything. This is all volunteers. But we'll get contactees from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and we'll program them. And it's real easy. It's the same thing. Give them a message. Just before they go to bed, have them repeat the message in their head several times. And have them do it every night until contact. First time they're contacted, the first thing that comes out of their head is that message. Now, sometimes, I got to be honest with you, sometimes the Greys get hacked off about it, and they do punish them for it. Most of the time, they just ignore it. Because the Greys are so used to talking, communicating back and forth and being in each other's head, it's not really a big deal for them. It just really depends on what the question is. Most of the time, they do ignore it. They just answer the question and let the contactee go on with their business. Sometimes the contactee has conscious recollection the next day. Sometimes not. Sometimes they're like, oh, I don't remember that. And y'all heard me before. I'm not a big fan of hypnosis. We do use it. I'm not going to lie. It is a last resort for everything we do. And the reason why is being in the field as long as I have been, I have noticed that hypnotherapy has become a way to write a book or to make a little money or to do that. So we're very strict. First thing I'm going to tell anybody who wants to be regressed, I want you to bring somebody you trust absolutely beyond reproach. I'm not going to do it if you're not going to have someone there with you. Secondly, the very first time we ever regress you, all we're going to ask you is to tell us. Tell me what happened at May 15th between this time and this time. I want you to tell me from start to finish, and I want you to tell me from finish to start. And that's it. We're going to videotape the whole thing, tape the whole thing, and that's going to be the end of that session. Then everybody's going to review it at one time. The investigators and the people that are there, the contact you and their friend, will sit down and formulate a line of questioning from that point that do not use words like UFO or alien or extraterrestrial or any of this stuff. I have literally, and I hate to say this, but there's a lot of people in the field I've heard, well, standing there watching, well, what kind of alien was it? Well, if you just blew that, you can throw that right out the window because you just, regardless if this person had a contact or not, you just made sure they did. So we're very strict on that. It's something that you have to be strict on. The data has to be as pure as possible because, frankly, when we're speaking, when somebody's going to call me in a corporate for something, I want to say, okay, this is why we think this. This is where the information came from. This is how we obtained it. With the amount of contactees we have, it's a much easier thing than it is for most. And now that I've been in the field long enough to make friends with most of the major researchers, I can cheat a little bit. You know, I can come such and such and say, hey, have you had any? Matter of fact, give you an example. Just recently, about 8 weeks ago, I called Melinda Leslie up on the phone and said, Melinda, have you had any new MILAB cases? I'm not going to say what it is, what a particular thing that's going on, and because it is still in research mode right now. And she goes, well, how the hell did you know? And long story short, we talked for about 3 hours, I think, on the phone. And Linda hates when she calls because we literally talk for 3 or 4 hours. But still, she verified that data for me. And then by doing that, she turned around and talked to 2 of her friends, one being Yvonne Smith, who verified it. So now it's a lot easier. We have a nice big circuit of abduction researchers. We're working in the same areas on the same lines, and we can go back and forth between each other and keep track of our different contactees. Now, I don't want to run over here, and I got literally like 5 hours of stuff here, so let's see. We're going to skip around a little bit. I really want to talk a little bit about the union. Like I showed y'all yesterday, they're not all pretty and fancy like everybody thinks they are. All protruded faces. They're not these pretty things. Now, granted, they're probably making you think that. They're telepathic. Something that, let me backtrack for a minute. Something we've seen early in cases. A lot of our great contactees had spirit guides, like Indians. Okay, spirit guides, which I thought was cool. I'm like, all right, you got an Indian spirit guide. I want one of those. Well, under regression, a lot of those Indian spirit guides turned out to be little grays, which I thought, by the way, was kind of cheesy. I'm like, well, that's kind of wrong to do that. But the grays do that. They do image themselves. And one of the ways we found out that aliens don't transform into each other, stuff like that, is because we'll have a group together, and there'll be 6 or 7 people. And a gray will present it. Each one of those persons sees that grays differently. There's no way they could physically change into 7 different things. So the only way they could possibly be doing it is if they're sending the images, or if they're using the person's mind to protrude that one image. They got all kind of images. It's a very strange thing the way that works out. I don't know why it's so hard for most people to actually see the gray. They're not really that scary looking. I mean, they're not real pretty, but I mean, they're not real ugly either. I've seen nastier stuff than that. So I'm thinking, I don't know what it is, but they do that. They will image to a group, and each person in the group will see something different. The humans and reptilians do it as well, but not as much. The reptilians just don't really seem to care. They really don't. They just seem to say, whatever. You don't like the way I look? Too bad. Close your damn eyes. And take you anyway. But I want to get back to the humans for a minute. So we're talking about the human aliens. Now, this is where I get irritated. When it comes to humans, I don't get the middle ground like I get with the grays and the reptilians. With the humans, I either get what I like to term as the peace-loving flight contactees and the haters, because literally that's what they are. I don't know why it's so different. And we've got families where the brother is peace, love, and light, and the sister's like, blank, can't stand it, blank the aliens. And it's the same aliens. I have no idea why they do that. I don't understand why, and I don't know if they're actually brainwashing the individual to think it's good or if it's bad, or for some reason this one's going to get treated all sweetie and deetsy and taken up the ship and looked at it and hugged and stuff like that, and the other one's going to be probed. And made really angry. It's a real weird thing when it comes to the human aliens. It's a strange thing, and no one can really put a good finger on why it's like that. With the Greys and the reptilians, it's a progression. It starts at pre-birth, childhood, through your 20s and 30s, and it doesn't with the humans somewhat too, and moves on and progresses on a steady level, therefore, afterwards. With the human, it starts out like that. It's either good or it's bad, and it tends to stay like that through life. I have no idea why. I do know it makes we have more people that have been abducted by the humans locked up in psycho wards than any of the other races. And it's a real distinct difference there for some reason, and no one, like I said, can really put a finger on why. We've tried a little program them to see if we could get any kind of coherent explanation, but usually it comes back so jumbled that you're just kind of going, something's not right there. It's just not. And some of the bad stuff, I mean, they're rough. They're rough. They really psychologically really can warp a contactee. But then, like I said, they can take the brother or the sister, and as much damage as they just did to the other one, they can make that other one feel that much peace, love, and light. So what is this? To put the brother and sister at odds, or the two brothers at odds, or the kids at odds, or the parents at odds, to see who's going to win? You know, yeah, it could be built-in civil rivalry. It's hard to say exactly what it is they're doing here, but it's enough cases now that we can say yeah without anything conclusively. We've got enough cases to say yes, this is definitely going on. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's like with the reptilians. The first time someone wrote to me and said, well, the reptilian raped me, I was like, don't call me anymore. Really, that's what I said, which was wrong on my part, by the way. And I do, believe it or not, I will tell you when I've made a mistake or when I'm wrong. And 30 years of research, I have gone back and said, you know what, I messed up. I was wrong. This was not right, and this is why it's not right. I've got a firm rule when it comes to ufology. We need to police ourselves. We need to correct ourselves. It's why I brought up the Hill case yesterday. Because we really do. When something's not correct, we really need to be the ones that correct it. But going back to the reptilians now, in these cases, and I said this yesterday, with the reptilians, you have to be forceful. Anytime they come in and they take you for any reason at all, they're going to do whatever they think they can get away with. It's plain and simple. It's not that they're being mean or anything else. It's just they want to get as much done as they can at one time. And, of course, if you're willing to let them do it, they're going to do it. They're going to do whatever they think it is that they need to do at that time until you say to stop. Now, when certain experiments, you're not going to get them to stop no matter what, because, frankly, they got to get the data for it. But like what we were talking about yesterday, when ladies that say, or the men that say they come in and actually take them, rape them, stuff like that, you can stop that. You just have to stop that. You just, like I said, you have to be forceful, and it has to be more in a mental than it is in a physical. But you have to project it, and you really have to project it. It has to be put out there. But with the reptilians, they have different kind of technologies. The Greys technology seems to be seamless, flawless. Most of it's based on telepathic design. One of the first things we learned is the way the Greys slipped into the ship, the way the ships themselves had no seen. That's why, like I said yesterday, they had problems with Roswell. They found I-beams at Roswell. Grey ships don't have I-beams. So you had to wonder whose ship was actually crashed out there. You know, these are things that, once we learn these things, somebody has to go back and say, okay, well, wait, we got new information. Why is this like this? Why isn't this like this? Why can't we change this? Why does the field have to say so hardcore when something new is presented that may change something old? We have to be a little bit more forgiving there and a little bit more willing to say, okay, well, maybe we're wrong. Let's move on to something else. And those are things that happen. But the reptilians are funny because they will take you as a child. But usually when they take you, there'll be some children present, but there'll also be some reptilian children present. They like the children to play together. Now, the other two races don't do that. I'm not even sure why they do it, but they do it. And for some reason, they say they get along pretty well. There's not any real meanness there or anything like that. They get along pretty well. And it is one of those things now, are these children, they letting them play with hybrids? I don't know. It's possible that the children they're interacting with are hybrids. But until one of the reptilians comes and say, Joe, that's a hybrid, we're guessing. We really are. But it's one of the things they do. With the Greys, they let them play with other children. With the humans, they do the same thing. They let them play with other children. They don't let them get involved with the other hybrid children or with the other children that you see on ships that may belong to the other races. That usually falls into the keeper's hands. They're usually the ones that are going to handle the children, handle the hybrid children, handle the different types of children. Because hybrid's not always a good word. Sometimes you will see a gray child. Now, you can obviously tell it's not a gray, but you can obviously tell it's not human either. So it's not really a hybrid. It looks more like, I shouldn't use the word mutation, but it really does look more like a mutation. They have these children, they have the hybrid children, and then they have, I guess, their own children. But the keepers and the parents get to deal with this on a regular basis. I cannot literally tell you how many contactees have told me about seeing their children on board ship, and it doesn't matter what race it is. I mean, literally at this point, I mean, it bothers me because of the sheer numbers. If this had started in the 50s and we were talking about 100 or 500, 1,000 people, I'd say, okay, it's something much different. But when you start thinking that they've been here 10,000 plus years, I mean, we're talking probably an enormous amount of children. Even if they were only abducting 1 in 100,000 people at 10,000 years ago, that puts almost a full half the population today with alien DNA. And that's if they were only at 1 in 100,000. And today's ratio seems to be higher than that. So, I mean, that's a lot of people. So where are all these children? What are they doing with them? Where are they? They're not putting them here. What are these children being used for? See, these are the things that bother me. And these are the things I have problems with because, you got to wonder, the Greys aren't really, they're not really bad. They're not really good. But they are running these hybrid programs. And literally, you have 3 or 4 different types of programs being run with these children, and they're taking them somewhere. In the old days, they used to think they ate them. Well, we don't think that's what they do with them anymore. But still, I don't know what they're doing with them. I don't know where they are. All I know is you can't access them. You can't find them. And at certain points on board ship, parents are allowed to see them. Sometimes they see them when they're about yay big. Sometimes they see them when they're full grown. Sometimes they see them in between. Sometimes the parent, dependent on the parent, is allowed to interact with the child from birth on up until older ages. I did notice one thing. They do seem to grow rapidly. They don't seem to grow at the same rate we grow at. Because you'll have a mother that will see one. First time they see it, it's about this big. And they figured she took it just a couple of months. And then they'll see maybe 2 or 3 years later, and it's full grown. And so they're growing at a very accelerated rate. Maybe it's, go ahead.
Is that possible that they're seeing them at different rates of their age because of time travel?
It is possible. You can't rule it out.
Versus, our time versus their time.
It is possible.
Maybe they're growing at a normal rate, but we're just...
Well, they might be. If the Greys do like they do with their contactees and they step them out of time like they do, it is possible that they are stepping their children out of time and letting them grow at that rate, and then they step them back in. Of course, for us, it's been years it's passed. For them, it hasn't been anything that's passed. Well, it has, but it hasn't as far as we're concerned. It hasn't. So you can't rule stuff out like that. You can't. That's stuff that you have to leave in the research and see where it takes you. Because occasionally you'll run into stuff that may push one way or another way on that. And that's one of those questions that will probably get proposed and put up to the Greys. Right now, 2 of my Texas State Director and our Boston State Director, or Mass State Director, are working on a new list for that, a new list of questions to put to the contactees. So that'll have them include that in there.
And in line with that, you were talking about the same aliens, the great-grandmother and the great-grandchildren. Well, again, if they're able to step out of time, maybe we're looking at the same aliens because they're traversing throughout the family's timeline versus them actually being 2,000, 5,000 years old.
See, I thought that at first, but then I realized something. Prior to just 15 years ago, we had missing time, which means the Greys hadn't quite figured out how to step out of time yet. This is a new advent for the Greys. It started about 95, 96 is when we started finding the gain time. Now, it doesn't mean they didn't possess this technology ahead of time. I can't say that. But they weren't using it. They didn't start using it until around 96 or 97. Now, something else that's interesting about this is the Greys have shown progression from the Egyptian time to the day. Their craft have changed slightly. Even their appearance has changed slightly. So you can see an evolution even in them in our own history over the last 10,000 years, which I find that extremely interesting, that we can actually watch them evolve in our societies, which, of course, they're not a member of our society. So it's a very interesting thing to watch in itself. Where it's going to all end up, of course, we're all guessing. I can't think that all 3 agendas are good for the planet. I got to think at least one of them is, but I can't think they all are, because there definitely seems to be some differences between these 3 races in the way they interact with each other and the way they behave with each other. A lot of our Milad cases down in Florida, and there's an underground facility under Edna, which we've had literally now probably 500 or 600 contactees talk about. And they all describe it the same way, so you can take it to the bank that that's what it is. They've all had the same things happening to them down there, and literally, these are things that you can use to train. You can keep tracking forward, keep moving forward, keep seeing where it's going to take you, where it's going to end up. And the other thing about that is oh wait, lost where I was going there. Sorry about that. bring
Talking about the military labs.
Yeah, they because of the military abductions while they're there, sometimes the grays will be present. Not always, but sometimes the grays will be present. We think the grays are present when they're working with specific contactees, because they're worried about the government getting access to something they don't want them accessing. So, of course, they say, okay, well, we're going to be here while this is going on, where the red-headed doctor comes in. This is a very interesting gentleman. He has now been seen in more than 50 countries. Pretty much always described the same way, about 6'5", 6'7", big guy, maybe 280, 300 pounds, always in green scrubs. Some people say his hair is kind of orange, some say it's red, some say it's curly, some say it's flat. Basically, the same description of the same guy. For the last about 40 years, he hasn't aged at all, apparently. Matter of fact, a couple people say he's even a good-looking guy. But yet, he's there. He is definitely a hybrid of some kind. Now, if he's a human-alien hybrid, gray hybrid, whoever hybrid, I don't know. I don't know who he actually belongs to, but I know he's there at a lot of these mil-air things, which suggests that he's not actually working for the government, he's working for one of the aliens. But the reason I'm bringing this all up is if he's there, or if the reptilians or the humans there, and the grays show up, they instantly give way. I have had contact, you say the gray comes walking down the hallway, everybody just moves over. They just move over, they get out of their way. Apparently, the grays can be quite aggressive and quite hostile with both the human and the reptilian race. Now, when I got in this field 30 years ago, I thought the grays worked for somebody like the humans or the reptilians. Well, they do work for somebody. They work for the light beings. They keep a sharp eye on both the reptilians and the humans, and they do limit what they can do. Or else I think a long time ago, these two species would have got into it majorly over this planet. They definitely do not like each other. All you got to do is read the history to figure that out. Everywhere you see the human aliens in our history, which is pretty much every major society, you see the reptilians intervening. What I've always thought funny about that is in the Egyptians, the Sumerians, and the Mesoamerican, and the Native Americans, they all like the reptilians. Okay. And so I find that extremely interesting. Because that was another thing when I got into the field. I was always being taught that the humans were here to save us and be our friends. But the evidence doesn't bear true to that. The evidence bears true that the reptilians are the ones that gave us self-awareness. Even the Christian Bible says that. The serpent gave her the apple. And now that's an argument in itself. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? Should the reptilians not have intervened and left us as a dumb race? Would we have been better off? I don't know. Yes, we.
In Chinese astrology, there's a being known as Fohi, and it says that he was a divine avatar, and it says an avatar is an incarnation of the previous being. It says that it was said of Fohi that he had the head of man and a body of a serpent, and that he taught his people, the Chinese, and they always worship the snake and the serpent. He taught his people astrology, the meaning of marriage, and all these other things. So that was evidently a reptilian.
And they're not the only ones that do that. The Dogon have pretty much the same story. The Sumerians and the Egyptians pretty much the same story. And we were just talking about this earlier today about the Mesoamericans, that the Mayans, Aztecs, and the Incans. In all the pictures you see, the reptilian is holding the bringer of life. The human is holding usually the bringer of death.
Who is the human that you keep referring to?
Well, we call them humans because that's the way contactees describe them. They say they look kind of like us, but on average about yay tall. And in the old days, they said they were real. Well, I'm going to retract. In the new days, saying around 1950 this way, people started describing them as peace-loving light beings that were really beautiful, really tall, and really gorgeous.
Palladians, you mean?
That's what they call them. But see, that's what. Well, they've got a couple of different names. But in reality, when you go back and look at the text, that is not what they look like. I was showing them yesterday on the thing. There's pictures of the Egyptians. Yeah, they're not all that beautiful. They're not all that pretty. And they really don't look. I mean, they look like us to an extent. And you could see maybe if they had created us where some of our DNA came from. But we obviously don't look just like them. And we obviously do have a reptilian section in our brain. We can't escape that. So we can see, I mean, you have all this ancient text that's 7,000 years old. And all of it says the same thing. You have one race that came here and created us, another race that interfered in the creation, which created the species that's alive today. Like I said, there is some DNA evidence to back that up. There's a lot of flaws in our DNA, way more than normal. And it's not just the junk genes that give us away. It's not the 4,000 junk genes, even though that's, I think it's 88% more than when any other, it's either 78 or 88% more than any other animal has. But there's more than that. There's actually differences in some of our primary genes. There's actually flaws in them. which you do not find in any other species but man. There's several DNA studies that came out in the last 3 years about this. It's DNA and physics is two of the things I keep up with because for me, working in this kind of research, you have to have it. You have to see where all this is going. And really and truly, there really have been some really good DNA studies that suggest, well, I'll quote the guy from Harvard, looks like something intervened in our DNA. Something intervened, and he didn't say on our behalf or anything that's like that. The words he used was inject, actually. He said it looks like something was injected directly in our DNA. We were changed.
The tape of Ishkamar that I played yesterday.
I didn't hear it. I was actually at lunch.
Important because it talks about Ishkamar 30,000 years ago interfere with the development of species of the planet. And he said there was another group in existence that also interfered. And he said they're in direct opposition.
Yeah, well, the reptilians and humans are in direct opposition. Right now, we're trying to figure out, I should say the amphibians. I keep calling them reptilians. They're actually amphibians.
Do you have any specific information on the chromosomes?
Actually, they do. They actually.
Don't we have an extra pair?
Hmm?
Don't we have an extra pair of chromosomes
Well,
compared to the numbers of other chromosomes of other animals?
We used to have a
Yeah.
lot more.
Yeah, it's some reason that the planet's catching up with us. But it was like what I was talking yesterday about the 24 1/4 hour day versus the planet having a 23 3/4 hour days. Our optimal body temperature is not set for this planet, and our biological clock is not set for this planet. I mean, Mars has a 24 1/4 hour day. Earth has a 23 3/4 hour day. Our body is set to 24 1/4 hours. No one can escape that. That's science fact. Our optimal body temperature for working in an environment is 63 degrees. Earth is 73. So you have to wonder, how did we evolve on this planet? If we really evolved on this planet, then our DNA would show that first off, our biological clock would be 23 3/4 hour days. It's because it's been like that for 3 billion years on this planet and it hasn't changed. So we would definitely have evolved to that, and our body would work better in a higher temperature. Something that was interesting that somebody else brought up to me about if you look at the design of the human body, if we were all, say, 80 pounds lighter and 3 inches taller, we'd actually be optimal for the planet of Mars, not for this planet. Our body would be designed for that. So whether or not we came from there or not, or where our ancestors came from, it's hard to say. But I have heard several good arguments from mainstream science about Venus, Earth, and Mars going catastrophe all at the same time. Sometimes they put Mars at around 60 million years, Venus and Earth around the same time. Every now and then, though, I do hear Mars went in disaster 500 million years ago. Regardless, the planet Earth's been here, so anybody could have came here anywhere along that time and settled on this planet. 63 million years ago, they may have to leave. We do know there was a major disaster here 63 million years ago, but we also know that there's been 3 great extinctions on this planet, and we're just the result of the last one. We know these are things we can't escape. One more quick thing, I'm going to let Miss Lily have the mic right quick. What did I do with this? Because I really, guys, there's like 5 hours more stuff in this. I think I might have to actually put this on a CD or something.
The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter was a planet known as Naldak, also known as Lucifer, and George Van Tassel had channeled this information way back, the proceedings.
Well, science bears some fruit to that. They say that it could have been a planet 5 times the size of Earth. None of them will actually agree that it was a planet, but they do agree that it could have been a planet. I'm not sure where they can distinguish why they think it's not, but when I talk to scientists, they all say the same thing. No, it was never a planet. It was just debris left over. But they don't know that for a fact. Until we actually physically go to the asteroid belt, they don't know. They're guessing.
Yeah, that's what messed up Earth, Venus, and Mars.
Yeah, but that's another thing they said. Now, if something was large passing through there, because Mars went into catastrophe over a major impact that was 59 million years old. You can see the crater. Earth was at 63, but these dates can fluctuate by millions of years either way because none of us were here. They can't get a clear enough view of the surface of Venus because, frankly, it's been overturned so many times because of the lava flows on it that they don't know if there was a major catastrophe there. They do think there was a major impact. They do think it was around the same time. What freaks me out about this is you have 3 livable planets 65 million years ago. Venus, Mars, and the Earth are all inside the inhabitable zone of our solar system. All of them are. Which means you could have easily had 3 different races evolve on these planets at 3 different times, leaving this as the only inhabitable planet left in our solar system. That creates a problem for everybody involved, including us. Somewhere along the line, if that's true, we're going to have to share. We're going to literally have to share this planet. And with 6 billion of us already being here, that's going to be a hard thing to pull off because I have no idea how many reptilians or humans there are out there. And if they decide, and really at this point, if they would have planned it, they would have already taken it. So that's one thing I can say for sure. They're not here to wipe us out, and they're not here to spiritually enlighten us, because it would have been much easier to do it 10,000 years ago.
Well, did you know about the meteor that was coming down, that the UFO came in there and broke it up in smaller pieces?
Yeah, I've heard stuff like that. I've also heard about some near misses that seem to be bounced off. Then there's also always the Phobos video, which is pretty good, where you see the Russian probe going around the moon and then the light beam coming back around and knocking the probe off. It amazes me that once they let it out, they didn't have a choice. They couldn't get rid of it. But it's an excellent piece of footage if you ever get to see it. It really is. And it's very convincing to let you know that something's over there besides us. But I'm going to give her the mic for a few minutes. But I'm going to let Miss Lee tell y'all about one of her personal experiences. And then the last one, Q&A, and we'll give it turn to Miss Karen.
Hi, for you who don't know me, my name is Lillian Waters. Some of you might even know me by the name New York Lily, which I use on a lot of websites and forums. As you heard Joe tell, New York City is the fourth largest city with fourth in the row of most abductions. And I'm one of them. I've lived in New York City all my life, and my experiences pretty much go the way of what Joe said about different times during the life you get certain things. Like as a toddler, I had an imaginary friend. Actually, I had two. I had one who was an enemy and one was a friend. And we had fun. We played games. And later on, I started to wonder who this one was. And I realized that he pretty much fit the pattern of the abduction experiences I had later on. In high school, I had what I believe was 3 abduction experiences. In 1980, 84 actually, I had another one. And I was becoming more aware of what was going on, because I would wake up with marks on my arms, little holes, after things that felt like injections. But there was no way anybody could be injecting me. And in 84, I was floated out of my apartment with someone behind me who was faceless, wearing a suit. And his tie was like flapping up. And his hair was standing up on end, but nothing else was amiss in the neighborhood. It was raining out. And we were floated into what looked like one of those round-top automobiles from the 50s. And then that vehicle floated us down to the high school athletic field that was just across the street from me. Floated down the street and down to where a fence was low. And then floated over the fence and down to the high school. And as we're floating down there, I noticed that everything was very bright white. And I thought to myself, isn't that nice? Snow in August. And there was this little white being. Well, it was a being down there. It looked like he was wearing one of those white hazmat suits. And once the vehicle got down to where it was almost to the ground, I don't remember anything after that. Well, the next morning, I woke up, went to the window. I saw it had been raining out that night. And then I went and I looked out, and there was a white line that went exactly the direction and to the places where the vehicle I was in went, until it got to where that low fence was. And then there was no more white line. It was August. It was the first, August 4th. So there was no snow. What I think happened, there was bright white light down on that athletic field. So I put that in my mind, like, these are cases that are piling up in my life. I just kept it in my mind. I'm thinking, okay. But things really started to happen in 2008. in the times between, I went to school, took care of my dying my dying grandparents was in the 70s, took care of my dying mother, worked, did a lot of things you normally do. And then I got laid off from my job, and I had all this time in my hands. So I started to go to conferences, and things just seemed to fall into place. I went on a Ranger Park walk out in Staten Island, and I thought that walk was supposed to be, walk was for a place in the park where there was a spot where nothing grew for like 40 years. Okay, that would put it back to the 1960s. When I got there, I found out it was from 1975, where there was like almost a landing, and it burned the trees, and it singed the ground, and nothing grew there. Now, one of the things that I used to use to tell myself, nah, it's not an abduction, you're imagining it, was that no UFO sightings were around the time. That was one of the excuses that I used. Now I found out that there were sightings in the area in 1975 when I had some of my abductions. Okay, that excuse just took the high road. Then I started to go to conventions. I went to the X conference. One of the other excuses I tried to use was that one of the aliens I saw was blue. And that was when I was young. That was when I was 10 years old. Blue alien floated over to me and put his hand on my head, and I went out cold because I was screaming my head off. But hey, who heard of blue aliens? They were gray. Everybody knew that. Then I met Nicolette that year. And I was with Karen and Nicolette in the car going to a party after the conference here. And I told Nicolette her story. She was saying that these aliens came, and I was sitting in the chair here saying, please don't say that, blue. Please don't say that, blue. And Nicolette goes, blue? Well, I no longer had that excuse left for not being abducted.
Sorry.
Okay. You're bringing me into the light, Nicolette. So I could no longer use that excuse anymore. And one by one, things seemed to fall into place. 2008, I went to Roswell. Now, I don't fly. I don't like to fly. It's too painful for me to fly. So I took Greyhound bus. 2-day trip to Roswell. Gets to Philly. I'm already really impatient about how this is going. So I'm having a lot of trouble with my luggage and stuff. So I'm like saying, okay, guys, you can have me for the 2 days. Just drop me off in Roswell. You can even have me coming back. Just drop me off at home. But nah, nothing happened. Until coming back. Got between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And what happened there, it seemed like a dream. They usually seem like a dream until I see the physical trace evidence that was left. This one was big green guys. I came up to about their hips. And I felt they were communicating with me. I didn't hear them, but I felt like the sound of a voice. And in between the words, there were spaces where I knew what they were saying, even though the words weren't coming out. And they were telling me that they had things to do and they were going to get done. And, okay, I don't remember asking the question, but I would have said in my thickest New York voice, why the heck did you take me off a freaking bus? But they answered it. We had things to do and they're going to get done. And then I woke up on the bus after feeling little hands positioning me in the seat. Didn't see what it was, but that's what it felt like. And I was groggy. And we got to Philly, and I forced myself to, like, get up and walk around to Philly, determined to get a Philly cheesesteak, which I didn't get because I didn't have a good place in the area. And then I noticed when I got back on the bus, I had a hole in my arm, right above the vein here. 2 weeks prior to that, I had found a hole in the arm. Same vein, different spot. So now I'm really starting to wonder what's going on here. While I was out in Roswell, I listened to the lectures of Daryl Sims, and he talked about trace fluorescence being found on the bodies of abductees, and how he thought that it was something that the entities were leaving behind from their skin or the fingers, I guess a sort of alien sweat. So we got a little black light flashlight. The one I got was called Stink Finder. You use it to find places where your dogs and cats made a mess. And for 6 weeks, I would shine it on my arms and legs before I went to sleep. And then each time I woke up to go to the bathroom and get a drink of water, I would do the same thing. During those 6 weeks, I found pink fluorescence on my leg twice. First as a dot on my ankle, and I kept telling myself, it's nothing. Don't pay attention to it. And then 2 weeks later, I found a 6-inch streak going across my shin that also ended in a pink dot on my ankle bone. That one I took a picture of. It was pink in the black light. When I took a picture of it, it came out like a greenish color. Someone I know on an internet site whose job it is to photograph fluorescence told me that I need to take off the automatic white balance in my camera. I said, okay, I'll file that away. But in the meantime, I'm like, what is this that's on my leg? So I started testing everything. I tested my detergent, my fabric softener, any little bugs I found in the apartment, I smashed it and shined the light on it to see what color it was. Most things fluoresce blue, blue-green, or white. So the only thing I didn't test for a while, I figured it must be it. So I convinced myself that, hey, it must have been a mouse that sat on my ankle and peed. That's how desperate I was to have this as something normal and natural. But then a few weeks later, I'm going through the internet. It's like, okay, let me look to see what mouse urine fluoresces at. That also fluoresces at bluish green. The only thing I can find on the internet that fluoresces at pink is calcite with manganese and lead. And there's like no way I had any of that in my apartment. That for me was the last straw. I knew something was going on here, and it wasn't from around here. So it woke me up to deal with what I was going through and to accept it, that these were abductions. Granted, I still don't have any physical evidence, which I so much want. But I am going to be starting the scans of the black light again. And I already have one person lined up to analyze it. Yeah, that's my phone. What great timing.
It's on mute.
Got your number.
Well, you see what it's playing, right? It's playing the X-Files. So, I'm I'm going to be starting up the scans again. And I do have one person who's an organic chemist, and he said he will analyze it for me. And just, well, I don't believe in coincidences, but if you do, just out of coincidence, I cut my leg open last May. Now, I'm on steroids for asthma, so my skin tears very easily. And I bumped into something, cut my leg, just sliced the skin off the leg for about 6 inches. And I had to go to wound care. And this physical therapist, he has a PhD in physical therapy from NYU. He does the wound care. So he kept bandaging up my leg for 6 weeks. And I find out that he's into ancient astronauts and Eric Von Daniken and stuff. Like, yeah, somebody can talk to. And he told me, I showed him the picture of the fluorescent streak. And he showed me how to do skin scrapings. So now I know what to do with my camera to take off the white balance. I know how to do skin scrapings now. And I have one chemist who tells me he will analyze it for me. I'd like to get some more chemists because I would like to send it to different people independently so I can see if the results are the same. But at least I have one now. So now I'll be starting to do that again. And hopefully I will get that pink streak because I so much want it. I don't want my abductions to stop. If my abductions stop, I'm not going to know what's going on. And I want to know what's going on. Plus, over my lifetime, I've developed a relationship with these guys. I believe that some of them are grays and some of them are reptilians. And whether or not I like it, these are my neighbors. How many here like all their neighbors? These are my neighbors. I've developed you love your neighbors?